Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our session today. Today we'll be discussing how to best configure and leverage Amazon Business for public sector organizations. My name is Evan Hatfield and I head up our education and local government accounts team here in the UK. Our team supports organizations such as schools, multi-academy trusts, nurseries, and universities. We also work with a lot of housing associations, care homes, fire and rescue, as well as local authorities across the UK. With us today is Paul Ashby, who is currently employed as the Senior Commercial Officer for Oxfordshire County Council within the Commercial Intelligence team. He serves as the lead for all purchase-to-pay activities, as well as being involved in category management of indirect areas of spend, development of policies, procedures and systems, corporate governance, supplier relationship management, and contract management. Thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you, Evan, and thanks for such a generous introduction.
So to set the scene for our discussion today, we're really going to focus on three key themes. The first being key purchasing drivers for Oxfordshire. Next, we'll walk through Oxfordshire County's customer journey with Amazon Business. And lastly, we'll close with some insights from Paul and the value Amazon Business has brought their council and community. Paul, let's just jump right into it. So what would be helpful for us is if you could provide a bit of background information on Oxfordshire County Council and walk us through how your procurement team is structured for the various teams that you guys support.
Okay, well, Oxfordshire County Council is a shire council in England, in the United Kingdom. We're located quite centrally. We've got a population of about 650,000 people. And as a council, Oxfordshire County Council provides approximately 80% of public services to the county. And that means we've got significant spend, and it's around between 500 to 600 million pounds. Goods and services that we purchase at every end of the spectrum, from very modest spend through to multi-million pound contracts for services.
Sounds like a lot. So as most of us are aware, public organizations have various rules and regulations that must be followed really when it comes to the procurement of goods. So my next question, Paul, is how do you and your team take into account public procurement regulations when making a purchasing decision?
Okay, so first and foremost, we have to adhere to the public procurement legislation, which is underpinned by the EU procurement regulations. And I know we're about to leave the EU, but those underlying regulations are still going to apply. So that sort of underpins our governance process. We also then have our own internal governance, whereby we've got thresholds for based on value, basically, of particular categories of spend. So the value of a contract, if it's a certain threshold, we would have to advertise that opportunity to give an opportunity for suppliers to apply. Beneath that, we ask for quotations, a certain number of quotations. But the thing that underpins all of our procurement is around transparency, fairness, and value for money. So that's what we find is critical for us. And as I say, we've got a whole range of internal governance to ensure that we work through that process.
Gotcha. Perfect. So I want to shift focus a little bit, Paul. I'd love to talk about the journey that you've been on so far with Amazon Business. So if you could you start by walking us through what made you decide to try Amazon Business and where did you start?
Okay. Well, I would say the main driver for implementing Amazon Business was around efficiency in our P2P process. So procure to pay, purchase to pay, whatever terminology you want to use. Despite being in an organisation who spends millions of pounds, what we find is there's an awful lot of inefficiency around our tail spend, which is the low value, high volume spend. In one or two areas where we might have a contract in place with a supplier and we've got catalogues on the system, which enables it to be easier for our buyers to undertake process. We also find there's an awful lot of inefficiency in the P2P process around multiple invoices for very low values. There's a whole process flow around raising a purchase order, goods receipting, invoicing, and quite frankly, that whole process probably costs more than some of those invoices in terms of value. So there are certain rounds of inefficiencies around that. One of the tools we use for our low value ad hoc spend are purchasing cards, or procurement cards as they're known. And what we've known over the years is that many of our users in schools or services are using Amazon in any case. So when the opportunity arose for us to implement an Amazon business account as a corporate account, as one entity for Oxfordshire County Council, and we did so through the route of YPO, Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation, we thought that it would bring an element of control to our purchases through Amazon. It would also give us some visibility and some intelligence in our corporate procurement team, so we could understand why people were using Amazon, what the strengths of using Amazon were, but also whether we could introduce any checks and balances in place that wouldn't have been in place before. So the main driver was around efficiency and also bringing in some control and some balance to the use of Amazon as a marketplace.
So I think next, Paul, what would be helpful is for those listening in today, it'd be useful for them to understand, the main challenges that you faced when you did decide to move forward and implement Amazon Business.
Okay, well, I think the first challenge that I would say would be around perception. So the first consideration for me would be, well, how are people going to perceive this? So it might be our internal finance community. Would they perceive that there's going to be a bit of a free-for-all if we sort of legitimise, or we've got an Amazon business account, so start using Amazon now. So obviously, you look at introducing this thing in a controlled way. Also, there might be some sort of resistance from services and schools whereby they may have had well, we've got our own Amazon Prime account, we don't need a corporate account, what's in it for me? And the way in which we could approach that was that actually we only need to pay for Amazon Prime once as an organisation rather than our services and schools. So, we're going to actually save you the cost of that. You're also going to have the ability to have the next day deliveries without paying postal and shipping charges. So put yourselves in the shoes of the stakeholder as to what's in it for them, to actually show them that there are benefits to them. And obviously the main benefit for, say, the corporate finance community, or it might be your audit team or somebody else, is actually our procurement card holders are using Amazon at the moment. At the moment, we don't have any visibility or control over what's happening there. If we implement Amazon Business, we have a whole range of tools that give us visibility, gives us management information, and also enables us to put some checks and balances in place if we find that that's necessary.
So you mentioned some of these tools and solutions within the business account that really have helped you guys so far get that visibility, get that control. When you opened or created your Amazon business account, how did you approach it? Did you guys lock everything down? Did you come in with an open mind and open up the marketplace to everyone? So it would just be helpful to understand what your approach was, and then any tools that you're using to help gain any additional insights about your buying population.
Yeah, so if I wind it back first to when we first implemented procurement cards, we were very cautious. We locked them down quite tightly. We blocked a number of merchant categories because there was this sort of whole suspicion that people might be buying what they ought not to be buying through procurement cards, and there'd been negative publicity about procurement cards in those days in the media. Some of the newspapers have said all the frivolous spending by the public sector on credit cards, all those sorts of negativity. What we found though, by introducing it such a controlled way and restricted way, the tool wasn't working. It wasn't doing what people needed to fulfill their roles. So very early on, we realised that no, let's have this. Let's put our trust in our managers and employees. The managers are given the responsibility to manage their budgets. So part of that is that they ensure that those card holders in their teams are spending responsibly and that they are checking those purchases. So we gradually reduce those sorts of controls, and it's been much more successful since. So when it came to implementing Amazon Business, we didn't put any of the workflow controls in place at all, because I knew that those users were using Amazon, and I knew that most of the card holders are responsible. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, and sometimes you sat there in two minds. But no, let's introduce the tool. And the good thing about the tool is it's very flexible. So if early on you found that things weren't working as you wanted, you can put some controls and restrictions in place, such as workflows against particular categories of products and goods on the system. So I think there's the reassurance that if you want to put some controls in place, you're able to. And it's got to the stage now where there's one or two areas where I'm looking at putting some controls in place, simply so that I can ensure that there's compliance with some of our corporate contracts for the supply of goods and services in a particular area.
Yeah, we hear that often from customers where they take the same approach that you have, go in with an open mind, don't put in too many controls, and then start to learn about that buying population. And like you mentioned, because of those insights through Amazon Business, you're actually able to drive some contract compliance. Absolutely,
yeah. So I think go into it with an open mind. Don't put all the restrictions in immediately. If you want, you can introduce it to a pilot group, not a big bang approach, and then take it from there.
So I'm curious to know, where are you guys in your journey today with Amazon Business?
Okay, well in the introduction, I think you very eloquently described how many users we've got. So we've got over 400 users and growing, many thousands of transactions. I've been monitoring the activity on the account by way of the management information that's available, and the heartening thing for me is that what it's doing is it's achieving one of our sort of objectives in terms of adding efficiency to our process, in that the vast majority of transactions that are going through are quite low value purchases of high volume goods. So that means that all of that inefficiency in terms of thousands of invoices pinging into the P2P process, that's not happening. It's going through the Amazon Business account and our procurement card. So that's very heartening. As I say, I'm looking at maybe bringing in some workflow controls in a couple of areas, and I've introduced that in a couple of areas, but that will be subject to review. And we're also looking at, because we can get analytics, and we've got a very good Amazon account manager. We have regular reviews, and we've had an annual review looking at some maybe category areas to see where Amazon maybe can be seen as the source of supply in those areas, obviously working within the parameters of the public procurement legislation that we need to. So that's the next step, looking at where Amazon can add value. The other thing I'm keen to take forward is, as Amazon effectively is not only a direct supplier, it's this huge marketplace, is how we can have some influence. It influences to if any of the suppliers we contract with can be part of the marketplace, can sell their goods and services through the marketplace, and in particular our local SMEs, so our local small suppliers, because obviously one of our overarching objectives as a council is to have a thriving economy in Oxfordshire as well. Now, obviously, in recent months with the COVID situation, that's been very, very challenging for many types of organisations, and we've done a lot of work as a council to support our suppliers through that period. So it's whether we can partner with Amazon and to enable our suppliers to use Amazon as a platform forward, and to take their businesses forward, and so that we have got that thriving economy.
Wonderful. That's great to hear, Paul. So I want to move to our third and final theme, really getting more insights from you. What challenges related to public sector has Amazon Business been able to alleviate or potentially fix for you guys?
Okay, well, I think Amazon Business came into its own during the COVID situation. So we've got several thousand employees. and we've almost overnight went from working in offices, as many of us do every day, or we used to every day anyway a few months ago, to having to work from home. We were very fortunate in that our infrastructure allowed that. Most of us worked off laptops and had access to mobile phones and so forth. We had access to all of our systems and everything. The one area where there was some challenge though was in printing, because like many organisations of our size, we have a managed print contract, a managed print in offices, which means we've got these huge multifunctional devices that we all network print to. Now, obviously another objective of ours is around environment, in that we know we actually want to reduce the amount of printing we do, which is being fairly successful corporately. But we do have some services who provide critical services, and in particular I'm thinking of our registration service, where part of the process had to be on paper. And what we found was that during the early stages of lockdown, our regular suppliers of printers were unable to fulfill our requirements for supplying printers to this essential group of staff who needed printers from home to enable them to carry on their service. So we worked with Amazon very early on. Our IT team identified the particular products that our team needed, and we were able to go through Amazon Business. And what we found was, because Amazon has that huge logistics presence, delivering to home addresses was less of a challenge to them from say some other suppliers, and the process of ordering and enabling the fulfillment of those orders is very simple. So that was really successful. Another area where we found how helpful to have Amazon Business was around sourcing PPE, which because we support the care sector in Oxfordshire, one of the things that one of our main roles in our team was early on was sourcing PPE to support the care sector. Amazon had a portal that had been put together for the NHS, which was restricted, but at one point they allowed their Amazon Business customers to have access to that portal. And whilst we haven't used it, it's not been an exclusive source of PPE by any means for us. It enabled us to have another channel we could use to source the essential PPE we needed as a supplier. And at the same time, we had the reassurance that Amazon had been through the due diligence in terms of the products on there, because it had been done in consultation with colleagues in the NHS. So that was another avenue that has been very helpful to us.
That's great to hear. So I have two more questions for you, Paul, and then we'll wrap it up. What recommendations would you make to other councils, schools, local authorities with regards to Amazon Business as they potentially explore or begin their journey with us? I
think the first thing is try to have an understanding of who's using Amazon in your organisation and why they're using it. Maybe identify areas and commodities that you could source through Amazon without treading on the toes of any of your corporate contracts, because I think some in the audience will say, well, but we've got a corporate contract for office supplies and stationery, and we don't want Amazon to undermine that. Now I'm in exactly that same position. We've got a corporate supplier for office products, but to be fair, if you get your contract management right, your users are familiar with you using your general suppliers who you've already got, they should already be disciplined to do that. And I've not found that there's been any major leakage at all on those contracts with the introduction of Amazon Business, because that will be one of the main considerations, particularly of procurement colleagues, of, well, we can't introduce Amazon Business because we're going to have a leakage from our office supply supplier or IT commodity supplier. And understand your purchasing, understand your patterns, understand your buyers, but also take that leap of faith. So do implement the system if you find it's appropriate for your organisation. But as I've said earlier in the interview, I wouldn't put the restrictions in place to begin with. I would introduce it gradually as a pilot, and then maybe with a pilot group of users, and then you can see that what purchasing patterns are there, and that the tools are in place to make it very easy to start to put some controls in place if you find it necessary.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for that, Paul. I really appreciate your time today and sharing a lot of your insights, your journey with Amazon Business, and I'm really excited to see what we can do together in the future.
And so am I. Again, and thanks for inviting me on.